Casey, thanks for joining me today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So you are with TCP and a pretty active investor, I'd call it, inside the Medtech, health tech world.
Yes.
So tell me a bit about TCP and the construct.
Yeah, so TCP is a venture capital fund management business, and we have kind of three main strategies. One is primarily through our Northgate, our US business. It's a $5 billion asset manager. We have a fund-to-fund strategy that invests into premier US venture capital funds. We have a direct fund strategy that does enterprise software deals as they move on from the early stage. And then what I'm here for primarily is our dedicated strategy to health med technology, that where the Med relationship is really the cornerstone and anchor to that strategy.
And well, first of all, Med's a great strategy and sort of playbook that Amr and the team have put together there. And you've been involved with Med for quite some time as well.
Yeah, so if we go back more than a decade, our operating plan or investment plan with groups is often we invest our own money first when we see something we like. We get a feel for the people, the team, the process, the strategy, and then we try to put it into some sort of fund vehicle for our investors and clients then that they can do. So met Amr and team, really like the strategy, really like the fast follower approach that they have. Invested our own capital in the first couple deals, and then quickly realized that this was something that was both highly attractive from a risk-return perspective, but also very sustainable over time, meaning that they could identify and recognize great opportunities and execute on those time and again. So it became a very strategic for us to then build an investment strategy around this relationship.
And it makes sense because most investors first look at the team, then they look at the market, then they look at the technology generally in that. And when you get an organization like Med, whether it's Laza, whether it's Acora, whether it's Adana, it doesn't matter because the same philosophy and generally the selection of the team members emulate leadership.
Yeah.
And so it allows you to go check talent, check leadership, check track record. Okay, now let's drill down on that technology.
Exactly. I think when you know, any kind of venture investing, early stage investing, it starts with people. And so if you can identify a great entrepreneur, that's the beginning. If you can identify a great serial entrepreneur, that's sort of like hitting the jackpot. And I think with Med, it starts with that. And if you usually have the great entrepreneur, you then have a great culture around the entrepreneur. And I think what's really been impressive in the evolution of the Med model is the institutionalization of the platform. So starting from having a smaller venture studio that can identify great opportunities and turn those into great companies, building out a lot of the shared services and capabilities that allow the companies to thrive basically as R&D companies and not have to worry about finance and HR and legal and all these other things that at an institutional level you provide each of those companies. So for us, this is what you look for in terms of a long-term partnership.
Yeah, and I know that, I'm pretty sure I'm correct, Laza, you also, and Pablo's leading that.
Yes.
I mean, I know you and I were chatting about Pablo earlier. Well, I was chatting about the Bay Area earlier. Pablo and I worked together building Verb Surgical. He was sort of chief technology there. But that's one outside the classic Med portfolio that there's not a technology like that. That's going to be a first mover technology in a high need environment.
Yeah, I think Laza is a great example of the direction of travel in, let's call it the Medtech, med device space, whereby, you can have a standalone product that's an imaging device, a part of a surgical intervention, but having something now that incorporates all of the new components of technology, robotics, AI, things that require, advanced data collection to get very much more specific and customized patient information is kind of where, certainly as an investor, that's where the ball is moving. So I think it's a great, again, I think in terms of Amr and team and their ability to recognize where the next big opportunities are, it's a great case example.
Yeah, and it doesn't move too far outside their subject matter expertise, right?
Exactly.
So interventional, cardiology, structural heart, okay, but now let's go into the AI data, and I love to see that shift in the classic portfolio, which has been classically analog devices for the most part.
Yes.
So now they're starting to go and infringe in that area in a very high need sort of domain. So that's great to see as well.
Yeah, I think this is an important point because it really builds upon what they already do really well. The catheter-based technologies, that we were an investor in Nuvera Medical, which is a very, in many cases, a similar product to the core technology of LASA. It just now has these added components to it.
So with that in mind, you talk about the future of medtech, 5 years out, 10 years out. As an investor, what are you going to be looking for as you make your decisions?
So I think first at the company or investment level, more of these component parts that allow for converting data to information. So using AI tools that allow for customized and personalized management and care and treatment of patients, monitoring of patients, and then obviously the robotic elements as well that really fulfill a need when there are bottlenecks in the human capacity, meaning there's a shortage of capable technicians or what have you that do this. So I think at the company level, that's one thing. At the, let's call it at the industry level, I think there's going to be more groups like healthmed that are, and we're starting to see them develop. In the same way that in general venture capital, you had Y Combinator as the pioneer in this incubator space. Now you have incubators all over the world. I think this is really starting to develop in the medtech space. We see more and more of them. They're younger, they're not as institutionalized, and maybe never will be as healthmed is developing for themselves, but there will be more of that in the future.
And I'd love to just extend that question out a little bit. When we think about the strategics, the innovation inside the strategics has really slowed down over the last decade or two because they're doing what they do well: supply chain, distribution, support, et cetera. But innovation, and perhaps the model, the classic venture model by itself, is no longer sustainable, right? You're an entrepreneur, you come out, you come up with an idea, you build it, you do clinical trials, 50 million. You build a sales team, another 50 million. And then you still don't have a buyer. What are your thoughts about seeing more structured deals in the build to buy scenario where the strategic comes in, identifies a gap, then outsources off balance sheets to a core competency subject matter expert, because all this new technology in AI and digital is not a native domain expertise of the strategics.
Yeah.
So as an investor, do you see that as a potential financing vehicle downrange?
Look, it's possible. I think there's always an evolution of the business models of the large strategics, and you can look across any industry, right? Whether it's oil and gas or pharma or medical devices, they're generally the biggest companies aren't great at innovation. They are much more, they take a portfolio approach to acquiring young companies and then doing what they do best, the commercialization, the manufacturing, the sales, all of these things. So there will be different models that come up from time to time. I mean, we see it now in the generalized tech area, where there's a lot of, I guess you would call it acqui-hires of teams in artificial intelligence because of they're trying to navigate through some of the regulatory environments. So, these large companies are often trying to navigate both how do they acquire or build new technology and without tripping up some of the government regulatory issues and so forth. So it's always going to evolve, but I think this is one model that probably is going to be quite effective for them.
It's interesting because outside of an FDA regulated product, you can be a lot freer with things.
Yes.
Right, so you have the sort of built-in governor constraints of an FDA, so you generally, these larger companies have to protect the portfolio and reputation as to not get over the line on FDA because it sweeps through the organization. So trying to mitigate some of that risk off balance sheet, sometimes where it is at arm's length, allows them to play a little freer.
Yes, I think so. I mean, we've seen that with some of the acquisitions recently, whereby once they've brought an Abiomed,
Shockwave.
Shockwave into the larger strategic, there's much more scrutiny of some of the very specific issues that came up during their clinical trials and work.
Right, because it systemically affects the whole ecosystem. So,
Yes.
yeah. Well, I appreciate your time, taking time out today and sharing with us TCP.
Thank you. It was really nice to meet you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
I'm Joe Mullings from the floor at TCT 2024. Be well.